The next question actually is for Jith, because he is the cinematographer, director of photography. Whenever you were creating the atmosphere, what did you do for the lighting, the the camera work? How were you able to get everything to kind of come together and make it look the way it did? Basically give us the background for all the technical aspects of it.
When I originally talked with Derek, we talked about movies like Seven, kind of dimly lit, harshly lit, not without a lot of lighting, and I wanted to also shoot it wide open, so wide open aperture. So we initially rented lights, and we found that it was too much light, and we ended up using just two 40-watt bulbs and a 60-watt bulb. We just took a trip down to the hardware store, which gave us the look we wanted, and the rest was kind of done in grading. Most of it we shot tight, so you just see faces and hands and things like that. And there are a couple of wide shots towards the end, and we shot wide shots, masters of everything for safety before we went into editing, so we had it as an option.
Whenever Jith and I started talking about what we were going to do about the look, I made suggestions of things like he said, Seven, and then Fight Club, which, like the basement scene in Fight Club where everybody's kind of raccoon eyes and it's very dark and dingy. That was kind of the look I was going for. So he was able to execute it pretty easily, and I was kind of surprised that we got all these lights and then we ended up using some 40 watters and a 60 watt. So that's part of filmmaking, right? It looked so good, and we used his Canon 5D Mark II to shoot it on, and it looked really good.
My next question's for Melody, because she kind of described from my viewpoint, a very unique way to prepare for her character. You were ready to go into this character, and you're just telling us how, when you read the character, this is how you thought of her. Like, what did you think about that? Why were you able to develop her that way and kind of totally show up completely prepared to be Sarah?
I know her whole story. That's what I started to from the start. I didn't want to work right away on balance. I didn't want to work on the action. I really wanted to get to know her. When I was rehearsing, put myself in those uncomfortable situations and to really make it truthful. So when I arrived, I already know, I guess, the equipment I was going to be working with, but I think the fact that I want to say so much. I don't want to ruin anything, but the fact that I worked with and I truly worked with the equipment made it more realistic. Let's say that, so I'm not giving anything anyway. That was a hard question to answer without saying everything.
Yeah.
Well,
but it was fun though, because all of the prep that she did made it easier for us to work with.
Yeah,
it's true.
Because the whole thing, what we're doing is creating real people, real characters. We're not caricatures of a hero or a villain or a damsel in distress. Or whatever. You have to have a real person behind them, and unless you go up there and defend that person, no matter how horrible or how good they are, properly, with all their faults, with all their goods, with everything, they're not believable. And part of that is actually researching your character. Why are they where they are? How do they, even little things like how do they stand? How do they walk? How do they talk? What kind of language do they have? Do they have an education?
And a great example of that is, the trailer shows me tied to a chair, so that's not a big deal. We can talk about that. At the audition, I don't like being tied up, and I happen to mention it to Derek.
That's exactly the reason why we put you in that position, is because you said it bugged you so much, and I said, perfect, realism.
Yeah. So I was able to bring that. It wasn't Robert who's afraid to be tied to a chair. I'm afraid to be tied to a chair, and it just so happened that my character was tied to a chair, so it worked out really well that way.
Yeah, you're bringing out parts of you. Every part of every character is you. So if the character is angry or crazy or whatever they are, that's inside you. And what your job is as an actor is to turn that up. Turn up you and bring that out. So you're more believable that way. You're not putting on a fake crazy. It's your crazy is coming out. And that's what moves people. That's what makes great characters.
One of the things I really liked about the Mel, Dan, and Jordan was the fact that they were not afraid to ask questions when it came to their characters. They were very, very open in terms of asking, like, what can I do, or what's the motivation of this, or what's the story on this, and it was great. It added, I think, to the film really well. The characters became deep. They have substance. They make sense. They're more than just names on a paper. And it was great. Thank you.
Yeah, you do your smart work of memorizing the lines, and when you get to set, you stop worrying about lines, and the lines will come out, whether they're word perfect or not. They're going to sound real when they come out because they're coming from.
And I don't know how many times we did it on set, but I mean, every single time was so different. Like that first take we did compared to everything else we did that day was night and day, and then every time we would do that wonderful slapping scene just over and over again, it was different and the reactions were different, and that was fun to play with, to see how I was going to react at any given moment.